Young has established a strong community link and has empowered young people to advocate for the reduction and elimination of the harmful practice affecting SRH issues. The network currently boasts a membership of 1,800 people. So well done to Young that you're doing in Kenya. And we are grateful that you're galvanizing the efforts of young people. A few updates from our end is that this call is being recorded. The webinar is being recorded. We are uncomfortable with the call being recorded. Please now, would be a good time for you to just let us know on the chat box that you would not want the call to be recorded. Aside that, we would go ahead to record the call. Again, I see all your welcome notes and all your messages on the chat box. On behalf of Young and all of us, we are happy that you are here and welcome. We see you all. Okay, so a few objectives from our end for today, especially with the major reasons why we're here. We are here to observe the International Day of the Zero Tolerance for Female Genital Mutilation 2025. We have been doing amazing work for the past few years, and the theme of this year is stepping up the pace, building alliances and movements to end FGM. An interesting theme, I must say, when I saw this theme, it just further highlighted the need for alliances for us. Alliance building is urgent, especially with about 27 million additional girls at risk globally in the next 5 years. We must indeed continue to invest our resources and work together as one global community to prevent these girls from undergoing FGM. It calls for everyone to really openly discuss and challenge the social norms, promoting its continuation, especially, and be agents of change to ensuring that girls grow up free from female genital mutilation. So hence the reason why we have put together this webinar, and hence the reason why we would want to encourage everyone to consider this space a safe space for us to discuss. Some of our objectives for today's webinar is that we want to showcase youth leadership. We want to also promote innovation in advocacy, and we want to encourage localization and policy action. But before we go on, we would want to give a few more minutes for more people to join in. And in doing so, we have a poll that we have popped in the chat box. And we would please encourage everyone to take 1 minute, 1 to 2 minutes right now to participate in the poll that we are going to be popping up in few seconds now on the chat box. I'm just going to have that ready now. Please just take a minute to participate in the poll. And then we have the interpretation channel. Yes, we have the interpretation channel currently on in English and in French. So just if you can click on the more button, if you're signing or if you're joining with your laptop, you would see that we have 2 languages available, and we also have the sign interpreter currently interpreted. Let us know if you have seen that and if you can see the interpretation channel. So Joseph said he cannot hear me. Joseph, can you hear me now? Can everyone hear me? If you can, please show by putting a thumbs up on just using the sign. Just put a thumbs up on your chat box or on your screen, and I will see that you can hear me. Awesome, great. I see a lot of reactions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay, so while we wait for the poll to pop up, I think we are sorting that out um, from our end. I would go ahead to proceed. So some of the expected outcomes that we want to achieve from this webinar today is that we want, first of all, a strengthened global and regional youth alliance. We want to foster cross-learning and South-South cooperations. We have like panelists who are going to be speaking, and as we progress, we hope to actualize some of these things. The second one from our end is that we want like an enhanced capacity of youth advocates in leveraging digital tools and creative arts for impactful advocacy. And we also want amplified calls for increased flexible funding to sustain youth-led anti-FGM initiatives. However, we want to also encourage, when you have the platform to speak as a panelist, as a participant, we want to encourage that you speak slowly and clearly, allowing our interpreters to accurately capture and translate your words for maximum understanding and smooth communication. And again, just for me to remind us that the webinar is being translated into French. And if you click the globe sign below the screen, you could select French. And we also have the sign interpretation currently going. Yes. We want also to make you know that you are heard and you're valued. And we also want to specially welcome our participants who have a hearing impairment. And we also want to let you know that you are valued and we honor you. And the webinar is also being interpreted, as you can see as well. Again, just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded for future use. A little bit of our safeguarding notes for us for this session is that as we engage in these conversations and these discussions today, and as we share our experiences, our ideas, our thoughts, let's be mindful of the sensitive nature of female genital mutilation and all forms of GBV and its impact on survivors. We encourage that the space is safe, absolutely safe. We encourage an open dialogue, and we want everyone to have that understanding. We want everyone to have empathy, and we want to create support for all survivors of female genital mutilation and any other form of gender-based violence. So again, please, let's encourage thoughtfulness and empathy as we share our experiences. I will also go ahead to pop in Yang's social media handles on our chat box. Please follow Yang and please tweet about this conversation, tweet about the webinar, share your experiences, your major takeaways, and we want to have these conversations going on live. We'll take a minute now to really appreciate some of our partners who have supported us to put this webinar together. The first is the Youth Anti-FGM Network Kenya, Young, thank you. The Girl Generation, the support to the African-led movement to end female genital mutilation, thank you so much. Orchid Project, we acknowledge you. Girls Not Bright Kenya is one of our partners. We acknowledge you. The CEO-led network on ending female genital mutilation and cutting, we acknowledge you, and relevant regional and international youth organizations. One of our partners, TGG, the Girl Generation, is a program that seeks to build a combination of evidence of the work that goes into the reduction of ending female genital mutilation in communities. And one of the striking documents that TGG has put out there is the guideline for engaging with the survivors of female genital mutilation. And we will be dropping the link on the chat box, and we would want everyone to really take a minute to look at this document. The purpose of this guideline is to create rights. We have the polls, and if you can take a minute to engage on the poll while I take you through the purpose of the guideline, that would be much appreciated by us. So yes, as I was saying, the purpose of this guideline is for us to create a clear and a supportive framework for working with survivors of FGM. I want to believe that this is an important guideline and document that is a must read, especially for all of us who are working in this space. The guideline is designed to make sure that we interact with survivors. We always put their needs and well-being first. We aim to involve, the guideline aims to involve survivors in a meaningful way and to empower them to speak for themselves while ensuring safety and protection. So the link is already up on the chat box as I can see. Please look it up, engage, use this guideline because you would find it helpful, and we are currently finding it helpful. So we'll go ahead now to take our opening remarks right now, which officially would open up, the event and this webinar. And I want to use this opportunity to welcome Ms. Benazir Mohammed, the chairperson of the Youth Anti-FGM Network Kenya. She will be setting the stage and welcoming us all with her opening remarks. And, she'll be setting the stage for the youth-led movements and alliances that this webinar also aims to achieve and bring together and promote. So please, I would want us to react with the clap emoji, the heart emoji, any emoji you want to use that comes to mind. Please react once she unmutes her mic and turns on her camera. Let's welcome her. Let's make her feel, loved, because she is loved as she takes us on the opening remarks for today. We welcome you. Let me see from my end if Ms. Benazir Mohammed, if our chairperson is, let's see, please 1 second. I'm trying to unmute. 1 minute.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Peace, for starting the webinar with such energy. I will be speaking on behalf of our chairperson, Mrs. Benazir Mohammed, who passes her apologies and also her regards to our partners and fellow young people who have come together to make this webinar a success. I serve as the Assistant National Coordinator for the Youth Anti-FGM Kenya. I am also a youth activist, and I'm also a young person from the Samburu community, which practices female genital mutilation. I have personally seen the collective power of young people when they come together to form movements and alliances and amplify their voices against female genital mutilation. I would want to open this space by spotlighting one of the key things that has really worked for the Youth Anti-FGM Network. And I understand that this particular space is being joined by young individuals from not only Kenya, but across Africa and Asia as well. And this is a best practice that has worked for one of our biggest campaigns. One of the campaigns that we have as the Youth Anti-FGM Network is the Kataa Katisha Zuia. And I understand if you're not from Kenya, you might not be able to understand what that particular means. But there are two elements to that campaign that has really carried through the work of the Youth Anti-FGM Network. One of them is the aspect of the personal touch that the campaign has. What this campaign has done is it has brought together young people from the grassroots communities, young people who understand the cultural norms of the practicing communities. And these are young people who are set apart because these are young people who have gone to school, who understand the effects and the consequences of female genital mutilation. It has given them a voice, which is very, very important. And two, another aspect of this particular campaign is building the capacity of young people. You know, what we always say is we might not be able to single-handedly end FGM, but by building the capacity of individuals and in the young people, then we are having a stronger fight against female genital mutilation. And with that, I'm really looking forward to hearing the perspectives and the experiences of young people, both panelists and other individuals, other young people who are joining the call. This particular theme for the International Zero Tolerance for FGM for 2025 clearly speaks to what we are all doing, which is building alliances and movements to end FGM.
Thank you so much, Valerie. I agree with you completely. The role of young people, honestly, can never ever be overemphasized. And indeed, the theme really speaks to us all. Thank you so much for charging us with that. And we acknowledge the work that Yank is also doing. And kudos to the entire team and for the joint effort as well. So we will then move over to having our first session, which will be on legislation enhancing the role of youth in shaping and enforcing anti-FGM laws. And for that, we'll be having Caroline Legat, who is from Kenya, and she is the program officer for End Harmful Practices Equality Now. Caroline, if you can hear me, please feel free to unmute your mic and take us on this session on legislation. Thank you.
Good morning, afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Caroline. Welcome. Thank you. Please let's encourage her with the emojis. Let's welcome her. Let's send her heart emojis and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you.
Sorry, my internet is unstable. I'm not able to switch on my camera. So on the topic.
Sure, that's fine. That's okay. We can hear you.
Thanks a lot. On the topic, something I would like, first of all, to say is that the youth are a very strong movement. And this is something that we saw in Kenya with the Reject Finance Bill, because the youth were the ones that were leading this process. So let me put that as I'll keep referring to this. So when we are developing the law, one of the main things that is important for the government actors, state actors, and also other stakeholders to consider is to have youth as members of the various task forces, particularly when they're drafting the bill. So have youth as members of the task force so that they can also inform on the language that is being used in the bill, so that if there's no clarity, it can be clarified. Secondly, so that we can ensure that the language is simple and understandable. Secondly is it's important for the government and also stakeholders to involve the youth. In this way, when we are saying that, okay, let me take it back. So engaging the youth and also engaging them through the media and the social media that they use. For example, TikTok is very, very popular. And for the Reject Finance Bill, TikTok was the most popular medium that was used to sensitize everyone about the provisions of the finance bill. And the sensitization was not only on the provision, but also the implication. And then these provisions were again interpreted and translated into various languages so that the same video can be shared with our family members in the villages for them to understand the impact. So the reason why I'm sharing this example is with anti-FGM laws, the law is mostly retained either in English or in French, depending on where you're coming from. We've not seen much effort to try to translate or interpret these laws into other languages. And then also, we haven't seen much engagement in terms of discussing, like, let's say, example for TikTok. Is there a video, someone explaining, this is the provision of FGM, these are the implications, these are the various offenses within the law, and this is how you can find yourself, I mean, this is the punishment. And then from there, usually you will see engagement with the comments that are being made, questions will be made there. People will like, from there you'll see what comment is popular. That can be taken on, and more engagement be done with the comments that got the most likes or comments that got more engagement, because it shows there's interest from people from the topics that were raised, maybe in the comments section. That's just an example. I'm using TikTok as an example because that was very, very popular during the Reject Finance Bill in Kenya. And then I know we like to say that the language of the law should be simplified. That is true, yes, but what I would say is more engagement of the youth in the law. Why I'm saying this is because with the finance bills are usually very, very complex. Most people don't know where to start to read it, how to understand the figures, as well as what the government intends to do. As opposed to now the anti-FGM laws, it's just the offense, they will define it and then put the penalty. So the reason why I'm saying there's not much engagement of the youth with the law is because with the finance bill, the youth took an initiative, translated, interpreted all of that into other languages, shared implications. It went viral everywhere. But the same is not being done with the anti-FGM laws because there's not much interest or effort to try to engage the youth because we say the law is difficult. So because the law is difficult, you need to be a lawyer to understand, which is false. So there needs to be more effort from the government and also from stakeholders working on the law to engage the youth in the legal processes, not only in drafting, but also in implementation. Now, when we come to implementation, different countries have set up different committees and task forces, multi-sectoral ones or not, that are engaged with ensuring that the law is implemented. Do we have spaces for youth in this committee? Because that would also be a way for them to pave the way for people to understand more the provisions, the gaps, and what more we can do. So that's another point, engaging the youth in the committees that are developed, particularly multi-sectoral bodies or not, or even task forces. And then also funding. Much as, yes, we can say that the Reject Finance Bill was purely funded by the youth and also goodwill people donated for interpretation or all of that. I think it's important for governments to invest. Can you hear me? Yes, it's important for the government to invest in the youth themselves by funding youth organizations, youth-led organizations, also organizations being run by survivors of FGM, so that they can be able to run their programs and they can also continue to interact with the law because they're also the contact point with the community. So that's another point. But funding is most important. In meeting the youth where they are, be it social media, because most people don't read newspaper. I will also confess, I also don't buy newspapers. So I'm getting my news from Twitter, sometimes on TikTok, but mostly Twitter. So are we making an effort to use such platforms? And they don't cost much because you don't need to pay for advertisement. And then having youth in task forces, using language that they can understand, but also breaking the barriers, the language barrier, allowing interpretation and also translation of the provisions of the law into other languages. And finally, simplification of the process. And also sharing of information, because one of the major barriers of the youth engaging in the legislative processes, particularly when it's been adopted into law, is the fact that there's not much information on where and when and how they can be part of the process. If a bill has been tabled in Parliament, has it been disseminated widely so that people can can be able to access it and read the provision? Number two, if they do want to give their opinion, how do they give their opinion? And how is it being collected? When is it happening? How often? Because sometimes you just have one forum and then that's it. And then maybe that one forum is so far away, I can't travel and go there. So how else can I share my feedback? And then number two, when you're doing public participation, are you making sure that the youth are coming? Because what I've seen with public participation relating to law, most of the times it's the older generation. You don't see many youth there. They haven't, they say that you have to be invited for this public participation forums, but you do not have to be invited. Were they given the information to come, the venue, all of that? And then simplification of the process. When the process is so complex and you don't try to explain to people, it makes it difficult for them to also participate in the process. And then finally, I would say accountability in terms of the youth have shared their feedback. They have engaged in the process. Are you telling them? It's important for the government to also give feedback on how they have integrated the feedback from the youth, either in the lawmaking process and also in implementation, so that it's not just the youth talking, but you're not seeing change, but you're also not receiving feedback on how they're trying to make change. So these are the main feedback or the points that I would make regarding engaging the youth in strengthening the anti-FGM laws. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you so much. You have exactly, that is the reaction that I want to see. I want to see more reaction. If Caroline has spoken to your soul and she has spoken the mind of young people, especially in terms of participation, accountability, and the youth terminologies and being involved in the process of this lawmaking, because this is one issue that is relatable across board, across Africa, across the world. Youth participation is a big deal, especially when it comes to legislation. So thank you so much, Caroline, for highlighting the importance of simplifying the process, for highlighting the importance of accountability, and for also letting us know that the language needs to be simple and understandable. I think that was major highlights for me in all of it, because quite frankly, I'm not a law student, and we have gotten to that point where we should really understand simple things, because it shouldn't be that difficult, right? Especially when it comes to laws and policies that affect our well-being, our body, especially for women and girls. Thank you again, Caroline. Thank you again for keeping to time, especially as I didn't give you like a time frame or a timeline that was so on point. Okay, moving on. Again, to every participant, thank you. We have over 90 people on this call, and we cannot thank you enough. Thank you for your patience. We will then move on, but please write down your questions. If you have questions for any of the speakers, we have a time where we'll be taking the questions, and we also want to get your feedback. So we'll move on to another quick session for the next 5 minutes or less, if possible, please. And it will be on creative arts. storytelling, music, and arts as tools for reframing narratives. You know, this session will be demonstrating how creative art can be a powerful tool for advocating. And to take us on this session is Stephanie Maseki. She is the creative artist and activist, board member of the Kenyan Film Commission. Welcome, Stephanie. Please, again, in our usual manner, let us welcome Stephanie. Stephanie, if you can hear me, please unmute. I would also check from my end to see if I can do that from here. But let us welcome Stephanie as she takes us on this session. Thank you, everyone. Stephanie, yes, I see you. Mrs. Stephanie, if you can hear me.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Olu. My name is Stephanie Maseki from Kenya. Let me just introduce myself. I am Stephanie Maseki. I am a filmmaker. I am an actor. I also serve in the Kenya Film Classification Board at the Kenyan national government. And so I had us mention about the government, and so I'm keenly listening to that, which is really, really good because we have to task our government with some of these key issues. Now, I'll just go straight to it and talk about how creative arts, especially storytelling, music, and arts, can be used as a tool to reframe the narratives. Because I'm a filmmaker, I think the word reframing is an amazing word to use, especially in a campaign like this. I want to just speak about the power of storytelling in advocacy, because here we are doing advocacy on anti-FGM. And so for me, why I think film and theater and art is a powerful tool in storytelling, especially in advocacy, is because it humanizes issues. First and foremost, when you tell stories, especially stories that we relate with, then we connect with them. And this is something we don't do a lot, as a country, I would think. And this is something we are trying to do a lot. And that is where you find people are always told filmmakers, you need to tell our own stories. Yeah, so we humanize issues. And so, because whenever we do film, emotions always carry people. Another thing is that we challenge stereotypes, So you can imagine having narratives dismantle harmful biases, because that is exactly what you're trying to do. Because FGM has been and is harmful, it's a harmful practice that we're trying to, get rid of for a very, very long time. Also, we try to amplify, marginalized voices, which is something that we have been trying to do in a lot of areas and a lot of injustices in the country, not just FGM, but a lot of, injustices. Again, also, when we use storytelling as a tool, it means that we're going to engage different audiences. Now, we always speak about film and theater as a way to communicate. But again, also, I like what Caroline has said. She brought out a very important aspect, and she's talked about we are not seeing enough being done on our socials, especially by young people. And why is that? Yet the social media has been used in the recent past in Kenya, especially when we were about the rejecting of the financial bill in Kenya. How about if the same kind of energy was used, to do this kind of a campaign? I mean, we'll be speaking about something totally different. Now, that is one, the power of storytelling in advocacy. I'm also going to speak about, like something like music. Music has been used for the longest time to pass important messages, but do we have music? We focused on music as a way to end FGM. What kind of music, for example, do we have currently in Kenya, that talks about FGM or ending FGM or this kind of practices and how harmful it can be? Why? Because I mean, like I said, music is an emotional influence, music, also preserves our culture. It has been used to preserve our culture for the longest time. We have beautiful music in Kenya, but then do we use our music, to pass this kind of messages? Also, music has been used as a protest and resistance, but then have we used music for this kind of advocacy, especially when it comes to FGM as well? Don't forget, there are so many platforms for music. We have Boomplay, Spotify, YouTube, name it. And it is accessible in anywhere you go. So it is easily accessible. And so this message can easily reach to so many people at once. Number three, I've talked about film and arts. I mean, the creative arts being a very powerful storytelling. Storytelling is a powerful tool. Music also is a catalyst to change. And I'll talk about visual arts as well. For example, I'll give you an example that is well known, especially in Kenya. Wangari Maathai's murals that were all over and that were advocating for climate change. Do we have the same? Can we have the same kind of art, to advocate for FGM, and to advocate and say, no, we need to stop this kind of harmful practice? Are we doing paintings, murals? Are we having enough performances in theater? Are we having enough films to educate our societies in regard to that? Why? Because art is a mirror of the society, as we always say. Visual arts is it's used as a symbol, a symbolism and metaphor. It can communicate a lot, and especially Kenyans are lovers of art, and Kenyans love to buy art. But then do we have enough art that advocate for, ending FGM? I remember once long time ago, because I'm a social worker, we used to use murals for community engagement. We go do murals, have a theme and educate the community. Why? Because the community would tell you the story using that mural. Now, are we having the same kind of educational tools in our communities? Why? Because this is a public art first and foremost, because we put it in the public, and then it's going to engage the audience and also catalyze and also challenge people to have those kind of conversations that they would rarely have. As well, I ran a CBO called Itana. Itana means call out. And Itana, what we do basically is to do mental health advocacy. And we use this as a way to heal and as a way of therapy, and we do films and theater and all. And so this is one of those ways that we can use to, for healing and therapy and all, because it is art-based advocacy, and because FGM, we don't talk about, in my opinion, we never talk much about mental health and connect it to FGM. And this FGM has destroyed a lot of people, especially when you talk about mental health. And I am not sure whether we understand that enough. And I think we need to actually do that. Now, I would like to talk about a call to action in less than a minute. When it comes to theater and film and arts, collectively, generally, for me, call to action, what we actually need to do is to, integrate art in advocacy. And how do we do this? We need to collaborate across sectors, NGOs, government, media. Media is a very, very important aspect of advocacy here. We need to do grassroots engagement, encourage communities to participate in storytelling, and especially performances, because I've told you about murals and all, and I would like to tell you, like, communities are intrigued when they are asked to perform role plays, and so it just means that we are actually asking them to help us find a solution to their own problems. Yeah. So again, also digital and social media. Caro has brought that out extremely well. Digital and social media use is important so that we leverage on the digital space that has been created and that is taking center stage right now in anything and everything. Again, also, Caro, I think, has talked about it. Policy and institutional support. I think that is quite key. I don't want to that is just all I would like to just, highlight briefly. We can get to talk more. But yeah, I'm glad to be here and to share this, especially as a filmmaker. Thank you, Olu.
Personally, I think I would even want to hear you talk about some of like your major success stories, some of the challenges that you have also encountered personally and how that has also shaped the work. I even throw in lots and lots of my questions. We want to quickly give 1 or 2 minutes to participants who have questions to ask Caroline. So please, for everyone listening, now is a good time. Do well to raise your hand and I will unmute your mic if you have a question for Stephanie and you have a question for Caroline. If you also feel free, drop your questions on the chat box. I will read it out. I think we have one already. The above question is for Mrs. Stephanie. So, Mrs. Stephanie, you have a question already from Chizaram, and she says, is it ideal to play these songs and messages in the local stations, seeing that the local women who do this content are not on social media? What is the best platform to get the messages across to them?
Okay. So, is it ideal to play these songs and messages in the local radio and TV stations? One, I would say yes, and especially if you have the copyrights, because if someone has created this music, because the moment you create this kind of music, then it means what? You created this music for a purpose, to create awareness. And so, unless the radio stations or the TV stations or the media does not want to play your music, then I think you have the right to play this music. Why? Because every music is meant to be played, especially if you put it out there. It can be played, it can be out there, especially if you have the copyrights. Bit says, seeing that the law do this cutting are not on social media, what is the best platform to get the message across to them? I have seen a lot of coming and some of these communities that practice the cut, and I would say that most often than not, and especially when we are doing community advocacy, we are normally on the ground. We are normally on the ground and we play this music on the ground. And then again, I would also like to say, especially when it comes to radios, especially when it comes to radio and all, not to mean, you see, like phones and all, not everyone can afford a phone. Not everyone can afford an Android phone where they'll get into social medias and all. But I think a good percentage of Kenyan population, and I'm just talking about Kenya, and of Kenyan population can access radio. And by radio, I mean the mainstream radio or medium. Someone maybe to correct me if I am wrong. But yes, I would say most of this music is played on radio, and especially radios, not on social medias. Was that the only question?
Yes, I think Chizaram was asking what are the alternatives for people who are not on social media? Yeah, and you said the radio.
And then again, sorry, Olu. We have a lot of provision, especially for community radios. You'd find in Kenya, one thing I have come to appreciate, especially when it comes to media, is that we have a lot of communities that have created community media. Now, we have almost 43, 44 tribes in Kenya, and you'd find almost every single tribe in Kenya has its own radio that caters for their own, in their own vernacular. So you'd find we have a lot of community radio. They are speaking in the local dialect, and that has actually pushed a lot of messages, especially in our local communities and in our local language.
Okay. So I think for me we have another question before I move on to mine. It says, Florence says, I have a group of young people that did some short skits on FGM. How can we go for support to at least do a full film on the same? Because there's still urge from this group who wants and willingly to do the play. Florence, it will be good for you to unmute and ask your question, because I think, or Stephanie, let me know if this is clear for you, because
Yeah,
I think I need like more clarity on this question.
I think it is, because all they're asking is how can they get support to make sure that the advocacy work they're doing with kids or plays can go to the next level or can reach so many people. I would say, remember what I've talked about? I've talked about call to action, where I have talked about how to integrate art in advocacy, especially using different stakeholders. And I've talked about, the number one thing I talked about is collaboration across sectors. NGOs, government, and all. Of course, we do not have, especially in the government of Kenya, we do not have a specific fund that supports artists, but we have a lot of people who are supporting art or artists or, whatever kind of work they are doing, especially for advocacy. And we have the NGOs, some of the NGOs support this kind of work. Some of the government arms might support this work, and especially when it comes to the social injustices, and then as well the media as well. Yeah, so I would think collaboration with the NGOs and sometimes with the government can help us fund some of these projects.
Thank you. It would have been so lovely to see your face a bit, Mrs. Stephanie. But no pressure at all, no pressure. Right now, I think hold off with the questions and answers for now. Again, a big thank you to you, Mrs. Stephanie, and a big thank you to you, Caroline, for your sessions. I am sure that more questions will keep dropping in, especially with the use of media and the legislation, and we'll take them as we progress. So right now, we would be moving on to the panel session. And this session, we would like to discuss more on the diverse voices in the anti-FGM advocacy. We'll be giving a minute or two to all of our panelists who are currently present on this call to share on different aspects, on the work that they're currently doing and how they're engaging, young people at their different countries. The first person that will be welcoming is Afika Rahman. They are from Singapore, and they will be sharing their experiences as young leaders working on initiatives to end FGM-C in Asia. Afika will do a bit of introduction before they respond to this. And then I would also have like one or two more following questions for them. So again, let us welcome Afika Rahman as they share, some of their experiences as young leaders working in Asia, especially. This is outside of Kenya now. My way of encouraging us to also listen and also understand like the different dynamics and the context, in Asia. And see how some of these issues also overlap themselves regardless of the continent and regardless of the location where we are currently working in. So yes, welcome Afika. The floor is yours right now, and please take us away in like a minute or two. A minute will be better because I have like a follow-on question for you.
Oh wow. Hello everyone. My name is Afika Rahman and my pronouns are she and they. I am from Singapore. I am a non-binary survivor of FGC from the Malay Muslim community. So my cut was type 1B, which was, is it okay to describe the cut? Okay, so sorry, trigger warning. So it's the nicking of the clitoral hood. Yes. Sorry, can you repeat your question? I just want to say that I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much for all of your work and for over at FGC Singapore, like we're just happy to get like any opportunity to promote our work and talk about the work here in Singapore and Southeast Asia and Asia in general.
Yes. I think you're already answering the question because the question was on you sharing your experiences as a young leader working on the initiatives to end FGM in Asia.
Right, yeah. So I think my journey as a young leader advocating to end FGMC in Asia, it's not easy because there's a lot of detractors. I think as someone who is non-binary, so like my unique experience, there are different profiles to survivors, right? So like, initially the assumption is that only African women can be survivors of FGM, but of course, like we've learned that the profiles are very diverse. Asian vulva owners, if you were born with a vulva, like there is a risk that you may have been cut. So in Singapore, we practice based on our survey that we did in 2020. We found that about 75% of Muslim women or vulva owners were cut type 1 and type 4. So 75%, it was an online survey, but it showed that it was very prevalent. Yeah, so a bit of background. At 18, I actually first learned about the practice at a comprehensive sex ed workshop that was led by feminists. And yeah, like that was very shocking to me to learn that a cultural practice, from my community was considered a human rights violation and that was harming our babies, our baby girls, vulva owning babies. Yeah, because the assumption is that if the cut happens to a baby, they don't experience pain, but that's not true. Even though like they may not remember it, the mind may forget, but the body remembers. And so like with no medical records, there are no medical records of my cut. For example, like I was cut at a clinic, so like I don't know, what the impact is. And so, when we talk with other friends, with our youth friends and engage other youths, like that is the question, like, what happens now? And, I think for me, it started off pretty simple, just like having conversations, with other youths. It doesn't have to be very complex. It started off with like a friend having workshops about circumcision and body autonomy, and then like we end up talking about FGM. Like it can be as simple as that, like chilling with the girls, and then we end up talking about FGM. So yeah. Sorry, I'm really nervous because I haven't been on the panel in so long. But
No,
yeah, just jump in and guide me, with questions.
Sure. We are enjoying. I mean, personally, and I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone that we're enjoying, hearing your experience and the work that you're doing. So please, again, don't be nervous. We're all here for you. So I'm just going to proceed to asking you. So what are the key successes of what are the key successes that you have seen so far in your space, especially with the youth-led initiatives, in this space? What are some of the
Oh,
highlight,
Rashid, I think you're
and what are
frozen.
the challenges that you, some of the results, some of the backlashes, some of the success stories. Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Can you
can
hear
hear
me?
you now. You were frozen a
Okay.
bit.
Oh,
Yes,
I'm
finally.
sorry, my network. Yeah, but did you get me? I'm happy to take it again.
It's fine. I remember the questions. I'll
Okay.
try to talk a bit slower because I
Yes,
realized that it was a bit fast.
for the
Okay, so
interpretation, yes.
okay. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. I think some of the key successes of youth-led initiatives in this space, especially in Asia, I think, at first we had to connect, with the international community. That was very instrumental to cultivating our understanding of the impact. Because like, how can you advocate for the end of something or to end the practice if you don't understand the harms? And I think I can personally say that feminist-led organizations such as Sisters in Islam from Malaysia, and another one, an Indonesian organization, feminist organization called KUPI. So it's spelled as KUPI. It's an acronym in Bahasa Indonesia. And they have been very instrumental in documenting and educating and explaining, in detail, like how is it harmful? What is the impact on the individual and what does it mean to practice it? What are we, telling our community that like it's okay to abuse abuse our infants, our young girls, our children. Yeah. So, but now I think the local outreach that we did, because we founded the campaign during the pandemic. And so yeah, I think having a platform like locally has been very, very important. So for example, one of the outreach initiatives we did was distribution of our publication, which basically we explain like, what is the harms. Like we had like 10 points on like the harms of FGM, especially how it's practiced here. So yeah, so that was during Ramadan, the Muslim fasting month. So the first physical distribution I remember that I did with a dear teammate of mine, Saza, who's also, a co-founder of the campaign. I think we did it outside the mosque. The reception was actually very calm. People were actually very calm and receptive. They just, you know, they took the booklet and then they said thank you. So, that has been, I think, like online, like when we do our campaigning on social media, especially, I think the backlash, is very loud. It can be very daunting, but like when we go out, on the ground to do like our grassroots campaigning, like we realize that like people are actually very receptive. They don't know what they don't know, but they're open to learning about, what it's about and like, why are we talking about this? They're actually very, very receptive. And that was a really huge surprise to us. So that's why like, these grassroots and the ground, initiatives that we do, like it affirms our work. And I think, it's really, yeah. So like, I remember distributing booklets to young men and they were like very supportive. So I was like actually really taken aback, but I was like really happy. Like this is a win. Um, you know, some of the challenges, like, off the top of my head, like right now, we actually had a public panel that we wanted to do in person in Singapore. And, people called the cops on us. So we couldn't do the public panel and we had to um convert it into a private event, so it doesn't so that we don't get like another legal offense. We don't, get another criminal offense. But yeah, so where am I going with this? Um, So, even like it's really challenging. It's really challenging, dealing with this, but on one hand, like these methods of intimidation, it seems very strong, but like I think, like the police reports, I don't see it as a failure. I think that it's I think their consciousness, like my community's consciousness, is being challenged and tested. And, as leaders, as young leaders, I see myself like, as a young leader, I am merely a facilitator for change. So, because the consciousness is being challenged and tested, we just need to write it out with them, because I don't think we can dismantle something without building something else back in its place. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Afika. Interesting. Thank you for sharing, first of all. And again, your challenges are pretty similar to some of the challenges that we also have across the globe, including Africa and Kenya, Nigeria as well, and other countries in Africa. So I'm sure that a lot of us can relate to some of the challenges that you've also had. And we will come back to you with more questions as we continue to have these conversations. I would then move over now to Josephine. Josephine Wendy, are you here? Please feel free to unmute.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh,
Hi.
welcome, Josephine. Thank you for being here. We're moving on to you now, and I would like you to do like a quick introduction of yourself before I then go ahead to ask you the question that we have.
Okay. I'm trying to put on my camera, and it seems it is not working.
Oh no, it's fine.
Let me try if it will.
I could also start off with.
Please do so.
Okay, sure, no problem. So, Josephine, while you sort that out, because we want to really see you, Josephine is a disability rights advocate, and we know that with an estimated 1.3 billion people, which translates to about 16%, 1 in 6 individuals experience significant disabilities. So we have Josephine here from Kenya, who would want to, respond to how, as a dedicated disability
Hello, can I go
rights
on?
advocate that she is. But feel free to with your camera off as well.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Josephine Wenda from Kenya, and Ngugutintlila. A lady was born in cerebral palsy, and as I always say, that this is not a disease, it's just a condition. And I'm so sorry, I don't know what is wrong with my camera. I would like it to be on, but it is letting me down. So, yeah. So, thank you so much for having me today, and thank you for seeing it good for me to be here. Yeah, so back to our question, what we can do in collective to ensure that no one is being left behind. I think our main focus should be on the policy and legal frameworks. And why am I saying this? This is because we should advocate for strong and legislation that mandate equal rights and opportunities for persons with disability, such as accessible education, healthcare, employment, and public services. Uh, we, we should also push for enforcement of existing laws and ensure accountability for any violation when it comes to persons with disabilities. My other point is that there is also need to have education and awareness campaigns. Why I'm saying this is because we should raise awareness about disability rights, inclusion, so that we can reduce stigma, misconceptions that surrounds disabilities. We should as well educate communities, employers, and institutions on how to promote reasonable accommodation and inclusive practices. And the reason as why I'm talking about reasonable accommodation, you find that most of the employers, when it comes to disability and reasonable accommodation, when you request for reasonable accommodation, most people tend to think that you are coming up with some extra expenses, and because of that, they will not give you the opportunity to work with them simply because you are requesting for reasonable accommodation. And you cannot effectively work if you are not reasonably accommodated. So that's not like a favor, is just a requirement that a person with disabilities will be accommodated reasonable for them to be productive and also to be of great impact to the organization. My second, my other action that we should do in a collective way is also to have healthcare and support services. We should advocate for equitable access to healthcare and rehabilitation services for people with disability. You find that this is one thing that is very, very, very expensive when it comes to disability and healthcare. We have so many stigmas, so many stereotypes when it comes to disability and healthcare. You find most of the buildings or most of the hospitals are not accessible. And when I talk about accessibility, it's not only about the building, it's also, as the workers aware of disabilities, are they also accommodative to diverse disabilities? Do we have inclusive language that also accommodates by people with various impairments, like the deaf, those with speech impairment, and also those with psychosocial disabilities? You find that is a huge gap that we should all work together and collaborate so that we can also impact the lives of persons with disabilities. Another thing is we should also there is need to have universal design and technology. Nowadays everything is moving to technology, and if we advocate and encourage we should all encourage the development and use of assistive technologies that support communication, mobility, and daily living activities. This will ease the the challenges of movement when it comes to disability, because you see most of the people who have disabilities, movement is one of the challenges that they encounter day in day out, because most of us, we tend to use private means instead of public, because of our nature of our disabilities, which is way too expensive. So if you collaborate and encourage the development and use of assistive technologies, this will hasten our mobilities, and we can use technology whenever we are at the comfort of our zones without much challenges, and this will be of great help to everyone. We should also, the other thing we should also focus on capacity building and training. We should offer leadership and development programs, skills, workshops, and capacity building trainings to help the specific needs and aspirations for persons with disabilities who have their skills in such areas like financial management and advocacy strategies. I think this will go a long way. And to the last thing on this point, I would like to talk about the data collection and research. I think it is very important for us to also champion for accurate data collection on the status and needs of persons with disabilities to ensure evidence-based policies and practices. You should, and again, this will help in funding such as into this will help in funding research into disability inclusive solutions, whether in medicine, technology, education, or social systems. And my final point on that, we should really engage the communities and organizations for persons with disabilities, because this is where we will get the real lived experiences of persons with disabilities, and they should be in a position to represent themselves rather than being represented by others who have no idea on what they go they on what they face. So I just would like to engage persons with disabilities to be also to represent themselves rather than anyone else being representing them, so that we can get the real experiences and the real actions that we would like us to see in disability fraternity. And to our last question, what we can do, I think we should promote visibility and publicity to these organizations that are led by young persons with disabilities. We can do this to promote their work through social media, blogs, and media outlets to amplify their messages and attract greater attention to the causes they champion for. As well, we can support them in gaining visibility at local, national, and international events, so that they can also share their leadership journeys and inspire others. There are those who tend
Josephine, I think we lost you. Can anyone hear Josephine? I can't from my end. Is it just me? Yeah. Yeah, Josephine, if you can hear us, we lost you. I see your comments, everyone. Thank you, Florence. Inclusion of persons with disabilities is a very crucial conversation, and I agree absolutely, especially with all of the points that Josephine has been highlighted quite a number of how inclusion matters and what are the key areas that we should pay attention to in terms of inclusion. I think we have lost Josephine. Josephine, if you can hear us, we can't hear you, but we will still be here in case you can hear us and you have like more things you want to share with us. But all of your points, I have been taking notes, and I will be back towards the end of the call to share some. Well done. Thank you everyone for dropping in your comments. Please, let's keep them rolling. Let's keep the reactions coming, and we see them all. Everyone is seeing them, and thank you really for your patience. We would move over now to continue this conversation with Khadijatu from Senegal. Khadijatu, can you hear me? If you can, please unmute, say hello. If you can turn on your video as well, we're more than happy to see you. If not, it's also okay. Khadijatu, are you here? Can you hear me?
Oui, je vous entends, je vous reçois bien. Est-ce que vous me recevez également?
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Khadijatu. So Khadijat, we would want you to emphasize for us today, on the vital role of youth-led movements. I think this is a very important topic as well for us to be, and interestingly, one that you would be handling, especially with all of your experiences. So feel free to introduce yourself to us first of all, and then go ahead to emphasize the vital role of youth-led movements and leaderships in driving meaningful change. Feel free to also highlight how young people are at the forefront of social transformation and discuss the effective ways to support and empower them as leaders. You have the floor, Khadijat, for the next 2 to 3 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. Est-ce que vous me recevez bien? Très bien, très bien. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tout le monde. Moi, c'est Khadijatou Diabaté. Je suis une juriste de formation. Je suis également activiste dans tout ce qui touche les violences basées sur le genre. Je suis active sur la question depuis mes 12 ans. Et je suis également une jeune activiste d'Orchid Project. Je suis activiste depuis mes 12 ans parce que je suis issue d'une communauté ici au Sénégal qui s'appelle Tamba, qui fait partie d'une des communautés d'après les derniers recensements où l'on rencontre le plus fort taux de violences basées sur le genre et notamment des mutilations génitales féminines.
Donc, genital mutilation is practiced, and we see that there are more girls who are victims, who are survivors. That's why I have a great experience in Tamba, Kunda, and I have been active since I was in. So Khadija, I am the focal point of the national network fighting against FGM, and that organization has been, organized by UNFPA. So in Tambakunda also, I am a member of the GAC community in Tambakunda with the Octi project, and in that community, so I got a lot of experience because there are many associations that have been financed. They got funding through that GAC community. I am member of that GAC community. Okay, so and those grassroots organizations are doing, activities to end the FGM in Tambakunda. So now, in the frame of our activities, we do a lot of capacity buildings and between actors, community actors, with religious leaders and community leaders, with also some jurists, and even the ministries, the local government. And with my organization, I used to represent my organization in Paris in 2021, and I shared a lot of experience and recommendation and advocacies to fight against FGM in Senegal. So in Senegal and in Africa. So now to today, so we have the experience of all those activists from Kenya, from Asia. So there are good practices that are here. We can use those practices. So in our experience, we have cross-border partnership because what happens in Senegal, there is a law. There is a law voted in 1999, but Senegalese people move to the nearby countries like Guinea-Bissau and the Gambia. They send their daughters, their children, yes, out of Senegal. Yes, and that's why it is important we have built, partnership with those countries, Guinea and Gambia, so that our children not be brought, outside. Yes, to talk about my leadership helped me to have a lot of experience to be a young girl activists in this project and other organizations. That leadership made me influence, my community. So the leadership is the capacity to influence positively communities. And I'm proud to see that there are young girls and young boys who learn from me to influence their communities. I'm not limiting in myself in my job as an activist, but I am also a jurist. I am a student in Master 2 at Dakar University, and that permitted me to reinforce my capacities, capacity building in that domain. And I am now doing some researches in this field. And I see that if there are some crises in terms of climate change, there are also gender-based violence. It is also another domain. I would like to share that, and I would like also to talk to young boys to be involved in the fight against FGM. So I have an experience. Some days later, I was with some friends, male, and they were in an activity in another region in Senegal, and it was among the regions where the rate of FGM is high in Senegal. It is in Kolda, and what we noticed that the first people who are engaged are young boys, because there are many boys, many girls that were cut, and also they want to, support their peers like those girls to encourage them, to fight against FGM in Kolda. So those are experience that I would like to share, and I'm available to to answer any question that you would like to raise. And I would like to thank all Chick Project who permit me to be here in this webinar to share my experience about FGM and gender-based violence. And I would like also to thank, the organizers of this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Khadija, too. Thank you. Thank you. Great insights there. Thank you really for sharing some of your experiences with us. If it's okay, I would like you to please highlight how young people are at the forefront of social transformation, and also let us know, discuss some of the effective ways to support and empower them as leaders. Yeah, you could also draw, you could also draw lessons from your experience so far, especially in Senegal, and let's see how we could also pick lessons from there and apply on a broader scale. So if you can take 1 minute to highlight this for us as a young person and how you would want, more young people to be supported, please, would appreciate that. Thank you.
Oui, j'ai entendu la question. Est-ce que vous me recevez bien également? Merci. Alors, concernant la transformation sociale,
yes, about the social transformation, it is not a transformation that is 100% valuable, but it is a process. It is step by step. A social transformation is made step by step, but we can see that there are little changes. There are many movements like ours in Tambacounda. There are also other movements. There are also other communities which are very reluctant in the social change. That's why I can see that this is step by step. We can see that in the future things will change. We see that we have engaged, religious communities in the past. The religious leaders didn't agree, to be engaged in this fight, and even the community leaders. But now we can see some religious leaders and some community leaders who are involved in the fight against FGM, and this is, a good thing. So yes, but some of them are still reluctant that we are doing our best, to make them engage, okay, to be ready to see. And to talk about also the transformational leadership and the involvement in youngsters. And we see that there is a New Deal. In Senegal, we have the project of New Deal. This is not a concept that we have brought from outside, but this is a good concept that has been this is worldwide, and that New Deal with the support of UNFPA, it is very important. And we see that in the future we'll have a zero cut and zero, early child marriage in the future. And we have some person who are very engaged, okay, to be in this field. And the other thing that I would like to raise is the social transformation. I see that there is a law which forbids FGM, and that law was voted in 1999. And now we see that there is no severe application of that law, because there were some programs with the UNFPA, with the advocacy.
On va leur interdire cela. Et également aussi, ces grand-mères-là auront d'autres sources de revenus.
Those grandmothers, the cat was a source of revenue for them. So we were supposed to have some alternative activities to make them gain some incomes. This is what we were developing in the past. And we can see that there are boys that are engaged. I can see that. I can see that. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Khadija Su. Great insights there, I must say. Thank you really for sharing. And I like that you also went ahead to speak about, child marriage, because that's also something we are keen about and what we want to even move on to in terms of conversation now. We want to talk about child marriage. We want to speak. We want to hear more from, an advocate with Girls Not Bride, and to speak more to the issue and the context of child marriage, especially with, the gender-based violence that are done to children. So my way of saying that, it's time for us to listen and hear from Chesok Stacy from Kenya. Chesok is the Girls Not Bride Kenya Youth Advisory. She sits on that panel, and Chesok will be taking us through, as a member of the Girls Not Bride Kenya Youth Advisory Panel, her role as an advocate in the fight against child marriage, and additional questions I will be having for her. So Chesok, please, Stacy, if you can hear me, please unmute. Say hello to us, and we would want to hear more from you. Now, outside of female genital mutilation, we want to see, how FGM and child marriage, how they marry each other, and how they're also affecting, the girls at the community level, especially with your experience as an advocate in this field with Girls Not Bride Kenya.
Hello, everyone.
Stacey, can you hear me? Awesome.
Yes, I can hear you. How about you?
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely, I can.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning from wherever you're listening from. My name is Stacy Chesok. I'm an advocate, a youth advisory panel representing the Girl Not Bride Kenya. And as a young person from Kenya, from West Pokot County specifically, one of the marginalized communities that have high prevalence of child marriages and FGM in Kenya, and as a champion, my role as an advocate at the community level is to advocate and create an awareness. This is through the use of radios, especially the local radios, which is working magic in my community, because it is the channel whereby when you want to reach the interior parts of the community, it's the appropriate method to use. And I also use my social media platforms for example, the Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and whatnot, Facebook. And also I take part in community dialogues whereby I talk with the community about the harmful practices, that is FGM, child marriages, gender-based violence, and other things. So I also take part in policy engagement, that is I contribute in the development. And I also try to push hard for the stronger implementation of child protection laws. And also I work closely with the gender officers and child protection officers in my county. I also take part in mobilizing youths, especially to become agents of change in my community, because I believe as youths we have enough power to create changes in communities, especially whereby our parents are illiterate. So we take part in advocating for change. And also I take part in training girls, especially in the the interior parts of West Pokot, whereby these girls from the local areas are absorbed. And I go try to talk to them about the child marriages, FGM, and also train the teachers as well on how to handle these girls because they are vulnerable. And what I also take part is I volunteer with in West Pokot, for example, IREP Foundation, Declares Kenya, and I also work with UNFPA Kenya that at times they fund me to take part in these engagements. I also take part in participating in these special days that promotes gender equality, for example, in the eradication of FGM. And yeah, so and the next question I think is the specific action or roles that young people can take effectively to contribute to ending child marriage within our community, that is Pokot community or any other community, and on a broader scale. What I can say at the community level, youths can just educate the families and peers to discourage child marriage, and they can also engage the cultural and religious leaders to challenge these traditional norms and that promote child marriages, support survivors and at-risk girls, and try to connect them with organizations that provide sex shelter. That is the rescue centers. Here in Pokot, we have the Peru Rays of Hope, and we also have one here close to the Kapingura town that goes by the name GVRC Center. And also promote by supporting these survivors and at-risk girls. Yeah, we try to promote education to these girls and also some economic empowerment as an alternative. Then the youth can also promote alternative rates of passage, that is I've already talked about, that is education and economic empowerment. Then volunteer as well to organizations, and when are called upon to contribute to making policies, they can also take big role in that. At the national level, they can advocate for strict enforcement of laws. But I believe eradicating child marriage is not all about laws. It's all about changing mindsets, because there can be laws, yes, but the mindset of these people are just still intact, that child marriage is what they believe and they should go through that. And also use digital platforms like Twitter and like the webinars like the one we had, engage in. I use evidence-based to advocate for policies and whatnot. Then join youth movements and networks, for example, the youth advisory panels from various organizations like the Girl Not Bride Kenya. And then, yeah, thank you. Back to you, Olachi, please.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Thank you for sharing. I just have one question for you, especially, as you and you. What would you say that being on this panel, like what is the major highlights that you would say you have gained or achieved from being part of this panel, and how has it advanced your work towards ending child marriage personally?
Mm-hmm. The major highlight is seeing girls in West Pokot going back to school in large numbers, especially when during January after the long holidays. These girls, there are limited number of girls who are still staying at home, but most of them have reported back to school, which is I just feel happy when I hear about it. Then, what was the second question, please?
I like that you've already seen like progress. So in terms of, you encourage young people to be part of the panels and youth advisory panels. So what's like one of the advantages that you have seen in your work being part of this panel, so that we can have people, we can have more people eager and looking forward to, seeing how they could be part of some of these panels and the advantages that comes with it, especially with having a platform and a voice to speak with or to speak through.
Okay, I'd say the bigger movement that I've made is creating more networks, huge networks from my side, and being able to be recognized by my efforts here in West Pokot. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Stacey. Thank you. Thank you. Before we wrap up, we have just two more. Quickly, in 1 minute each, I'm going to have to be strict on time now, because we want to make sure that we close the webinar on time as we have promised. So we'll hear from Grace. Grace is from Nigeria, Grace Iho, and she works with Youth Network for Community and Sustainable Development. But interestingly, she is also the focal person for the Youth Anti-FGM Network in Nigeria. So Grace will share with us her role as an advocate, especially continuing the conversation on child marriage in Nigeria and some of the actions and the roles that young people can effectively do or contribute to ending child marriage, both within their communities and on a broader scale. Grace, if you can hear me, please feel free to unmute your mic and speak to this and give us a quick introduction about yourself and what we can do as young people to effectively contribute to ending child marriage. Thank you. Grace, can you hear me? Grace, can you hear me? I'm trying to unmute you from my end. I do not know if Grace can hear me. But I see her on the call. Okay, while we wait for Grace quickly, do we have Ishan on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you, Ishan. I think Grace is having network issues. She just dropped a message. So we'll move on to you now. Ishan, welcome all the way from UK. In the context again of Pact for Future, again, we would want you to do like a quick introduction about yourself, Ishan, and let us know how young people actively contribute to restoring trust in multilateralism. So please let us know. And again, quick introduction before you speak on this. Let me see. I think Grace is back on. No, she's not. Okay. Ishan, please let's move. Let's hear from you, and then we'll have Grace speak last.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for inviting me into this space. My name is Ishan Shah. I'm from the UK. I wear lots of different hats across the UN system, but here with my hat as a co-founder of Stolen Dreams, which is a youth-led organization working to combat modern slavery and human trafficking internationally, and also as co-convener of the Young Feminist Caucus. We work across the UN system to really push forward action on gender equality and the rights of all women and girls across different intergovernmental processes. And lovely to see some familiar faces as well, who we've worked with in the past on issues to do with child early forced marriage and female genital mutilation. And very glad that you raised the Pact for the Future and the Summit of the Future process. It was a UN process that happened last year, sort of looking at what are the institutional shifts we need to see to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. You know, what is the UN we need? What is UN reform looking like? And within that Pact for the Future, which was the outcome, and I can share the link to that in the chat, there was a specific action on combating female genital mutilation, child early forced marriage, and modern slavery and human trafficking, including the worst forms of child labor, which, according to the Sustainable Development Goals, have to be eradicated this year in 2025. So my message to those on the call is that your governments have agreed to eradicating these issues as recently as September. You can see behind me I have a Beijing Plus 30 poster because this year we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And member states are currently in New York negotiating a political declaration that will be adopted at the Commission on the Status of Women in March. And within that, there is language, again, on combating female genital mutilation, child early and forced marriage. So really use these UN resolutions and this language as a tool for your advocacy at a local level, at a national level, to hold your governments, including local governments, accountable. You know, they've committed to this. It's their duty as a state and as a government to implement these. So really leverage these recommendations and these commitments in your advocacy at a local level. I won't share any more because I know we're conscious of time, and others have raised some fantastic points, particularly with an emphasis on collaboration amongst us as young people, collaboration between countries and between regions, and also intergenerational collaboration, I think is very important, particularly in community and grassroots mobilization. But always here to support. So I'll drop my email in the chat and some links to the Summit of the Future in Beijing Plus 30, and really looking forward to building more bridges and strengthening our work together in this crucial fight to push forward action. So thank you so much for the space.
Thank you, Ishan. Thank you. We'll be looking forward to all of the links, on the chat box. But additionally, I want you to speak to something else. So, considering the pact's provisions and annexes, how can young advocates localize its principles and actions to create meaningful impacts in their communities and regions? Just feel free to also cite examples, and feel free to then link this to this question that we have. Yeah, thank you. Happy to take it again.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's the question of the century. How do we localize the outcomes of these UN processes? The ones that are decided at a very high level in New York and in Geneva or wherever, and are often very disconnected from the realities that we're facing on the ground and at the forefront of these fights. Get in touch with us. We're happy to support, but also just look at what issues you're passionate about. If it's child marriage and forced marriage, there are hundreds of UN resolutions that address child early forced marriage and female genital mutilation. It's about looking at those texts, seeing what the language is saying, and using that in your advocacy to bolster your advocacy. It's not so much as what we as young people can do for the UN, it's what can the UN do for us. The UN exists to serve we the peoples, us as young people. So really leverage that mechanisms there. But also this notion of collaboration and partnership. The UN, whether or not it exists, you're doing your work and you're pushing forward action and progress. But I know in a lot of your countries, in Kenya, you have an office, a UN office there. You have your UN Women Regional Hub there. These people who work at the UN mostly are very friendly people. They're very kind people. So happy to connect you with, folks who work in these institutions. So that you can collaborate and push forward some action at the local level. The strategy of these UN agencies now is shifting to a more regional, local approach because that's where the action is really needed. We can't keep pushing forward and churning out resolutions every year and chasing UN processes. We need to have some implementation. We need to have some accountability. And that's how we're going to be able to push forward progress in that regard. But UN language is very complex. It's a lot of jargon. So happy if folks are interested to sit down and have some more comprehensive discussions about how we can localize those conversations.
Interesting. Thank you, Ishan. I'm sure that I can see comments already on the chat box, and we'll be happy to get like more materials and further this conversation at Yank and beyond. I think Grace is back on now to the call. Grace, if you can hear me, I had already, introduced you as a member of the Youth Anti-FGM Network in Nigeria and your role at YNCSD. So we are also speaking on the topic of child marriage and seeing that you work in the northern part of Nigeria, which has like a high prevalence of child marriage. It'd be very interesting to bring into this conversation what's happening, in that context in Nigeria. And additionally, what are some of the specific actions and roles that young people can take to effectively contribute to ending child marriage, both within their communities and on a broader scale? What's the highlights for you so far working in this space, and how do you think as young people we can contribute, to this campaign or to the issue, to the context of child marriage? I'm sorry. So
okay, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you so much. So as a young person working in Nigeria to promote access to health for young people and also ending child and early forced marriage, I mean, it has been a very good, challenging and also rewarding, because at the end of the day, it's the result that matters, and as a young person who has been actively engaged in policy advocacy and legal framework, working with stakeholders, of course, and also ensuring that legal frameworks that
can anyone hear Grace? Please, if you can you help me pop that in, because I can't hear Grace. Grace, we can't hear you at all. If you can hear me. Hi, Grace, we cannot hear you. Your network is, yeah. Grace, we can't hear you.
Through these
I'm
reforms,
so sorry.
it's also eliminating harmful practices, and as well as community engagement. Can you hear me? Hello, Ola, can you hear me?
Technology. Yes, now we can hear you. It's clearer now. Hi, Grace. Grace. So I think Grace's network is really, really bad, and would have loved to really hear from Grace, because I'm quite aware of how the dynamics of child marriage is pretty different in Nigeria, and how it has like a lot of influences, which varies from different states. It would have been very interesting to hear from her. But
okay,
while we are doing that, waiting for minutes to take a few questions. Yes, I can hear you now, if you can hear me.
Okay, I am so sorry. Network is really poor.
It's okay, it's not your fault.
Okay. All right. So my first point was on policy advocacy and, of course, legal framework. As a young person working in Nigeria, it's very important that you understand the legal system, and not just understanding the legal system, but this legal system and legal frameworks that exist, do they protect access to women and girls? And also ensuring that eliminating harmful practices are included in every policy or legal framework document that is being adopted in my community. And of course, as a young person, one of the important things that has really worked is community engagement and awareness. We cannot just do any work without engaging grassroots community members. And we need to partner with them. You need to work with them to actually make them understand the importance of what they are doing and also eliminating harmful practices. Now, for early and forced child marriage, we know that some of these harmful norms are like norms that have been there for a very long time, and you need to educate them. You need to let them even know like what actually made them to start practicing these social norms and harmful practices in their communities. And then you start that conversation from there. You make them understand that it is important that community people, they are actively involved in even eliminating these harmful practices and ending forced and child marriage in these communities. And of course, as young people, it is very important for us to build our capacities. Now, that has worked well for me because working with other young people, we're very intentional about building our capacity to build a movement, like to amplify our voices, because when two or more people join their voices together, it's stronger and makes more impact, because the voice is stronger, and maybe about 5, 10 people coming together and speaking for the same cause, you see that people are even interested in whatever issue that you're coming to advocate for. And of course, it will even help the lawmakers, policy makers, and even decision makers to understand that you are not just standing alone, but there are other people that are supporting you. There are other people that understand your cause, other people that are willing to engage with you, other people that are interested in that issue. And for me also, monitoring and accountability, at the end of the day, you need to also monitor the impact of the work that you're doing. And that has been very, very helpful for me and for network members that I've been working with. So at the end of the day, we see to monitor the impact of our work. What did we do better? What are we going to do better tomorrow? And what are the strategies that we need to improve on? And all of that. So it has really, really been helpful. And I will encourage other young people to actually include monitoring and accountability in every project, in every intervention that they're doing. So it's not just doing the work, but it is also measuring the impact of the work that you're doing. Now, for a young person who is actively engaged in ending forced and child marriage and FGM in their communities, the first thing for me would be that you should be intentional about raising awareness. And of course, not just raising awareness, but how do you carry out these engagements? This can be done. I mean, we have storytellers, we have people who are engaged in poetry, people who are social media influencers. You can even carry out community dialogues in your peer sections, in your communities. It doesn't have to be something big. It can start with one person talking to another person, and then that's how like you expand the work that you do. And then of course, for supporting girls' education and empowerment, as a young person, it's starting up as a young person to advance your work. Mentorship is also very important, and that now has to do with you being intentional about your growth, being intentional about being able to like volunteer with small groups of organizations, and also being able to promote scholarships for vulnerable girls that you can even help to provide alternatives to child marriage. And this has to say that if you're carrying out an empowerment intervention, you should be very intentional about the needs of the target population, which are the women and girls. What do they really want? Are they interested? What are the particular skills that they want to embark on or learn from? What are the ways that
they want you to help them to boost their economic independencies, you know. So it's not just based on your assumption, but you're actually engaging them actively to know exactly what they want and all of that. And of course, if for you to even challenge these social norms, you need to engage your community members and religious leaders. You know, there's a strong influence that they play in changing some of these social norms. So you cannot just do your work without engaging them. For you to challenge these social norms, you need to engage them actively. They have been there in this community for a very long time. They understand the religious aspect, they understand the traditional and every other aspect. So this is you engaging them. And for me, finally, it's me calling on other young people to form like a small network with another young person to advance your work. There are many organizations and platforms that you can collaborate with. Trust me, it's not always about the finance. It's about you working with two or more other young people or even youth-led organizations to build a network. And that is what we do in Youth Anti-FGM Network in Nigeria. We form a movement from we started up a like group of friends, and that's how we grow big. And we have a network of over 200 young people across Nigeria. So it's just you starting and speaking to one person, and the next person speaks to other person, and that's how the movement just starts up and all. So digital advocacy, of course, is another essential part that you need to continue to engage in your work. I know some of us have been very active on social media, and you can carry out like social media campaigns. We all have bloggers. You can even write like online petitions that can amplify your messages and create, you know, and all of that. And finally, about providing peer support and even counseling to young girls and women at risk of child marriage. Now, this is us creating a safe space where they're able to.
Grace, you're breaking off again. Or is it my network?
A space where there's, you know, even if your organization is not doing it, how do you know?
Okay, can everyone hear Grace? I can't hear Grace from my end.
Okay, hello, Ola. I was not talking. I don't know if you heard me.
Okay. No, for the most part, we heard you. For the most part, we heard you. And we love your energy. I mean, we could listen to you on and on and on and on. But thank you really for sharing our energies. Please, if you're still here, you can hear me, so we know that we have everyone active, because we yes, thank you. Energy. I love it. Please, we are young people. Give me something. Just put up like the heart emoji, the celebration emoji, the love. Throw them in there so I know that you're with me and you can hear me. Awesome. Thank you all for your time. Right now we have the CEO of the Anti-FGM board right here and available to talk to us. We are going to give her all of the love that we are currently sending in right now for her to take us through the keynote address on the power of youth in global movements to end FGM and C. Please let us cheer her up. Let us welcome Mrs. Benedetta Lolo Drew. I am very sorry if I did not get the name correctly, but we are happy that you're here with us and you're giving us time. Please take out.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I'm very glad to be here to really speak to young people and to really push this agenda of ending FGM. But I know most of you, or 100% of you, are advocates against female genital mutilation. I'm sorry I'm out in the field, but I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Can
hear
you
you
hear
clearly.
me?
Clearly.
Okay.
Yes, we can
I'm
hear you
out in
clearly.
the field
Yes.
in a place called Isiolo. I had another meeting, so it's good now you allowed me to do the closing remarks, because I was also having another community meeting with the, we were celebrating International Day of Zero Tolerance in advance before we move to other activities tomorrow and on 6th in Meru. So Youth Anti-FGM Network, youth advocates, survivors, creatives, policymakers, all stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, it is quite inspirational and fulfilling to share a platform tailored and made, scripted and cast by the young people towards innovative and emerging opportunities in the campaign against female genital mutilation. Indeed, the sermons of our time dictates a paradigm shift from the norm of routine and predictable strategies and interventions of ending FGM, to more robust, youth-friendly and contemporary approaches that will leverage on the ever-expanding and changing technological environment. I therefore concur with the young people on the need to explore and reach out to new frontiers on how movements, technology, digital advocacy, and creative arts can enhance efforts to end FGM. Albert Einstein, the German physicist, said that insanity is doing the same things the same way over and over again and expecting the different results. It is therefore incumbent upon us to embrace and take advantage of the infrastructure that comes with the digital superhighway, knowledge transfers, oral traditions, performing arts, and new allies to give a new order, meaning and face to the End FGM campaign. Therefore, in our quest to accelerate efforts towards abandonment of FGM, we have no choice but to unlearn what has not worked and learn what will work. We have to reach out to new allies, and these allies are the young people. Ladies and gentlemen, what are therefore the existing opportunities to the young people in building global movements to end FGM? Number one, currently the young people sit in a pole position to form critical masses and movements by partaking communal decisions, attitudes, national conversations, and global influence. They are accessible to education, information, media, and networking. Young people are more self-aware than before and therefore more knowledgeable regarding their rights and opportunities. Youth are inspirational and critical to ending FGM in their generation as culture shapers, policy influencers, current and future parents. The ever-increasing number of youth-led organizations and the demand for youth-friendly approaches is a manifestation of the critical role and signal that the youth can take advantage of to strengthen their alliances and partnerships. The global high uptake of the End FGM campaign by the young people is a strength that, if well coordinated and synergized into movements, can translate into the advantages of the sum total of their individual parts. Youths are more connected and engaged than ever with social media, providing access to new information, new ways of communicating with one another, and providing accessibility on a world previously beyond their reach. Young people are open to new ideas, influenced by role models and figures around the world, and ready to give their allegiance and passion to issues they see and reflect modernity. The young people, therefore, are ready and willing to form a common front to fight against any harmful practice that can deny them opportunities to realize their full potential. This is an inquisitive, confident, vibrant generation. It is full of energy, potential, and aspiration, and can lead the way in speaking out for change and new order. Young people are in a unique position to coordinate community participation initiatives, sensitively address cultural barriers, build bridges and act as cultural mediators, and willing to participate in intergenerational dialogues. The high level of diversity among the young people presents strengths in diversity. Every young person has a unique character, abilities, competencies, skills, knowledge, perception, attitude, experience, background, talents, and gifts that can hugely contribute to group dynamics. The existing legal and policy frameworks that propagate human rights approaches, including the freedom of speech and association, provides a conducive environment for the young people to network, present petitions, participate and form lobby groups that can sustain movements. These opportunities present a rich menu and opportunities upon which the young people can tap to enhance movement building and sustainability. As we prepare to commemorate the International Day of Zero Tolerance for FGM, the young people need to interrogate themselves on how they can step up the pace towards building alliances and movements. FGM is a global challenge that presents monumental challenges and so needs global movement. Ladies and gentlemen, how can the young people sustain movements? We need to invest in the young people by establishing, supporting, and sustaining youth-led organizations to enhance their visibility and efforts in ending FGM. To achieve the goal of a society free from FGM, the youth movements have their role clearly cut out. The sole role of eradicating FGM in your generation. This is a tall order, but it is doable. Let the movements be for the youth and by the youth. You must set your own agenda and dispense it. Embrace human rights and gender-sensitive budgeting. Be on the table when decisions are being made to eradicate FGM. Not as a menu, but as a key stakeholder. Not as consumers, but as decision makers. Nothing for the young people without them. Share and transfer knowledge. Embrace resilient, sustainable, and innovative strategies. Enhance your resource mobilization strategies. Take advantage of the economies of scale by having joint implementation of strategies. Document and disseminate your successes, best practices, lessons learned, and challenges. Embrace community-led and evidence-based initiatives. Entrench the culture of accountability and transparency. Lastly, demonstrate servant leadership while keeping into consideration that to serve is to rule. Be consummate stewards, resilient, and agents of change. Thank you very much, young people. You are the generation that will end FGM once and for all. The task is in your hands. Go ahead and rule the world. Go ahead and become servant leaders. Together we shall end FGM. And FGM will end in your generation. You are very lucky to be born in this generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I personally feel very charged up, and I see the reactions. We all feel the same way. Thank you, Mrs. Moloju. We love the part of us being servants, adopting the servant leadership style. I personally feel like we all should take a pledge and say, I pledge that I'm going to adopt the servant leadership style going forward, because it starts with us. Thank you so much. And above all, I love how you encourage us to document our stories. There are no stories, there is no history without documentation. So in all that we do, in everything that we do, it's always important that we document. And thank you for charging us this way. Thank you so much. All right, moving on. We want to take a few questions quickly before we hand over to the chairperson, and then we have Brenda close this webinar. We have some questions on the Q&A side, and this is from Eric. And Eric says, I'm not sure who this question is directed to now, Eric. Eric is asking, what are activists doing to end cross-border FGMC in Senegal? I think this is for Khadija too, because this is tailored to Senegal. Khadija, if you can hear us, can you please respond to this?
Transfrontalier.
Okay, I'm not sure. So I'm just going to go over to invite Keegan. Keegan is the national coordinator, the Youth Anti-FGM Network Kenya, Young, that has brought us here. And we want to again say a big thank you to you, Keegan, for bringing us all together today. And Keegan, you will just give us a summary of some of the key takeaways that stood out for you. And then we can also, while you're speaking, take a look at some of the questions and also pop into the chat box. And then we hand over to Brenda to do the closing remarks. Thank you. Welcome, Keegan. Please, let's share all of our love to Keegan. It's not easy bringing us all together, mobilizing this and putting this together. Over to you, Keegan.
Thank you so much, Ola. I appreciate this, and I really I love this. As you guys have been told, my name is
Keegan, I think you're freezing. Or can anyone hear Keegan? I just want to be sure it's not just me.
I hope you can hear me now.
Now, yes. Now, yes.
I hope I can be. Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Amana. At the village, we're planning for the zero tolerance event. So yeah, the network is a bit unstable. But anyway, thank you so much, Ola, for this. And thank you for everyone who made time and joined. As I had mentioned, my name is Keegan Kagwe. I serve at the Youth Anti-FGM Network Kenya as the national coordinator. And there's nothing that has really felt closer home like the theme of this year, stepping up the pace, strengthening alliances and movements to end FGM. At Youth Anti-FGM Network Kenya, we're all about engaging the young people and working together to strengthen these partnerships and collaborations to end FGMC. Looking back at where we started as Youth Anti-FGM Network Kenya, 2015 has been a very long journey. It's now 10 years since we started this work and this progress towards fighting female genital mutilation. I really would not have done this without the support of the behind the scenes of the members of the network who have worked diligently to make sure this session has been live. And I also want to really thank our partners who have been supporting us. We thank the government of Kenya through the Anti-FGM board who've been really critical supporters of us as the young people. And a special thank you to the Girl Generation Program, TGG, ALM Africa-led movement, which works towards supporting Africa in accelerating progress towards ending female genital mutilation. Also, partly as a consortium member, Orchid Project has been building our capacity as young people. And I also would rightly want to mention that I'm part of the TGG ALM youth cohort. We've been trained and capacity built on areas on advocacy, and we've seen how this has been able to bring together us as advocates. I also want to thank Nguvu Collective, who are very keen on inclusivity and diversity, and who have been critical supporters of this webinar. The Girls Not Brides Kenya. How again can I not mention you guys? We sit at the Youth Advisory Panel. We have young people who sit at that panel, and they've been critical because again in Kenya we know the intersection between child marriage and FGM, and I would dare say also across the continent, within the African region, is that FGM and child marriage intersect. And so once we address these two critical harmful practices, we will be able to make sure that we engage young people in a meaningful way. Having that said, allow me to say that we're in the year 2025 and we are almost 4 to 5 years shy of achieving SDGs. And so the progress that you are making, I may say we are at a slow pace because we've had kickbacks like COVID-19, we have protracted wars, we have conflict, and we've also had funding cuts and all that, but we cannot get tired. This is the time we need to accelerate more efforts toward abandonment of these harmful cultural practices. I like what the CEO of the Anti-FGM board called for servant leadership, that you cannot lead if you're not willing to serve. I appreciate that a lot because it's coming at a timely time when young people really need to rethink funding. As you've seen what is happening in the funding scape within the globe, it's also time for us as youth advocates who are innovative and have these good ideas to think about funding in the African philanthropy landscape. How can we support our own initiatives to be able to achieve whatever we want for Africa? I also want to mention that within the end of GMC space, we have, as Youth Anti-FGM Network Kenya, we have been really keen to support young FGMC survivors. They have been a critical voice who have not been left. We care about their mental well-being. We care about because FGM, we understand, affects these young girls. So we really care about their well-being, and we also care about their psychological welfare. And we really call for partners and everyone, as we also try to engage FGMC survivors. Let us not forget the young FGM survivors. We keep on saying that the young people are cultural shapers, narrative shifters, and we are the change makers of tomorrow. So that with that, we'll be able to see change. And again, I really I am inspired by the confidence and the points that young people have engaged. I think from you guys as a participants, you've seen how live the chat box has been. The young people have really contributed, and that shows that the power is really within our hands, it's within our keyboards, and we can work to support that. And so allow me not to take so much time, and let me not water down what every other participant has said. For me, my end is, let us keep on stepping up the pace. We cannot do advocacy alone. We are strong at our weakest point. And allow me to conclude by saying that let us increase resources to youth-led organizations. Let us support young people implement whatever they believe it is right, and let us support them in whatever area, be it capacity building, be it trainings, or whatever it is. So for me, my call to action as Youth and FGM Network Kenya is, please increase more resources to youth-led initiatives which work towards eradicating female genital mutilation. And with that, thank you so much. Allow me to stop at that. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Keegan. Thank you. Yes. Let us cheer on to Keegan. I am going ahead to just drop the social media handles, as I promised initially, for us to follow and send all of our questions. We'll be dropping the email addresses as well. Please feel free to contact Yang. If you have like more questions for us, what the network is about, you want to become a member and you're in Kenya, please, by all means. I will go ahead now to invite Brenda. Yes, I'll go ahead to invite Brenda to take us on to closing the final closing remarks. And Brenda is the policy and advocacy manager for Orchid Project. Brenda, please, you have the floor to close us finally as we wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Olachi. Thank you, everyone who has joined us today. I think as we conclude this webinar, it would be good to appreciate what we've heard from our passionate advocates, what our legal experts and also our creatives have been able to put forth, for us to be able to, learn collectively and to pick out what we want to also move with as we catalyze our communities. I believe for all of us today, our key takeaways as I was listening in and just trying to, tweak what we have had today. I have had really good conversations in terms of how are we going to highlight the critical role of, youth leadership in shaping policy and advocacy? What are some of the powerful, digital tools and creative, arts or storytelling that we can be able to amplify within the movement, and how youth voices can be included? I think this is that time that there's an urgent need for, stronger collaboration for us to be able to, sustain a proper youth-led movement at all levels. And so as we end this momentous webinar, I think it is a catalyst and a challenge to all you young people that we've been working with. Let this be the beginning of the conversation. Let not this conversation end here. Let it be more of a renewed commitment to action. I believe that the movement to ending FGM with young people in it is a shared responsibility. So what I would urge all of us is, let's continue the good work. Across regions, we have heard of the ALM youth movement and the ALM youth cohort that we are spearheading, that has been working across regions, bringing together South-South cooperation. Let us continue this work and what we have learned across disciplines and across generations. And as we've heard, we also need to change that consciousness, amongst our communities for us to build a better future for our women and girls.
So thank you very much to all our speakers and panelists. Your insightful and valuable contributions have enriched this conversation. I believe for all of us who joined in and listened in, we actually do appreciate the dialogue that was presented before us. We also thank the organizers, and I know that the speakers before me have mentioned all of them. I do not need to repeat, but we appreciate that they've been able to jointly support and create an amazing platform where youth voices and young people are in the forefront of, conceptualizing, mobilizing, and speaking in this webinar. And finally, a very huge thank you to our interpreters. You guys have done an amazing job. I was, keenly following and you guys have ensured that our Francophone audience is well captivated and engaged. Our sign language interpreters, we also thank you. Diversity and inclusion is something that we aspire to. So we hope that we'll collectively take whatever we have learned, whatever we've listened with us. I hope the conversations were enriching enough for you to be able to engage. As we've heard from one of the speakers, let us be able to collaborate one young person to another. And as you know, the one reach one and another one will also reach one. So each one of us should take whatever we have been able to pick from this webinar and reach out to other young person, teach them, and ensure that they reach even the marginalized of our communities. As we also speak to this, I'd like to say that in our conclusion, as we also wind up and head out, youth engagement is important, but also at the forefront of it, we need to put survivors of FGMC as frontline in the work that we're doing. Let us all remember that a successful movement, that is seeking to end all forms of violence must be led by those who are the most affected, the most vulnerable. And I'm glad that this webinar has been able to include all demographics, including, persons living with disabilities, across the spectrum and all genders as well. So we do appreciate that, and we are very glad that the organizers put that play as we were planning and executing this. I would just like to remind all of us that let us continue the conversation. I know that the social media tags and hashtags have been shared with us. Let us continue the conversation. Let's end FGM. Let us step up the pace. Let us invest and not rest. And my power, my voice to lead are some of the hashtags that we need to keenly follow as we move on. On behalf of TGGLM, I would also conclude by saying that we do have guidelines that have been developed for engaging with survivors of FGMC. And the purpose of these guidelines is to create a clear and supportive framework for how we are working with survivors of FGMC. So they've been designed to make sure that when we interact with survivors, we always put their needs first, their well-being first, how they feel emotionally, physically, always put that first. So we aim to ensure that we involve survivors in meaningful engagement and in a meaningful way so that we're able to empower them to be able to speak while we also ensure their safety and protection. And I know that we have put in the chat box a link for you to be able to access the guidelines, and that you'll be able to pass them across your networks and across other multi-sectoral stakeholders that you work with as young people. So thank you very much. And to the young people, keep the fire burning. Ensure that this conversation continues, because at some point they will outlive all of us, but the work that we started will continue. Thank you very much. Back to you, Olachi.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Yes, thank you, Chizaram, for sharing. It's been a great time hosting and speaking to you all. We hope to see you again, even way before next year's International Day of Zero Tolerance for FGM. Signing out from my end is Olachi, and please have a beautiful day from anywhere you're joining in the globe, and take care of yourselves. Bye, everyone.